confusing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, everybody. It is Monday, December 9th, 2024, the 1,419th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Here we are, back in black. I've returned to the home studio. So I will be getting back to, I think, doing episodes like my podcast has been for the 4.5 years up until about 3 weeks ago, primarily audio-based and pre-recorded, although I'm definitely going to introduce more of this sort of show and maybe even go more than 50-50 in this direction, just because I like some of the advantages it provides for me in terms of being able to get more stuff out, ease in operating the schedule, etc. Before we get started, I just want to point out this here shirt. I had designed this about a week before GART, which was when I kind of took off and was all over the place for about a month. But this arrived in my house about 2 hours after I left. And so I missed the opportunity to have it at GART. But this is my opt-out shirt for when you are too tired of PSYOPs. I made this little ghost. I love this shirt. So that's the one side. And then on the back, I don't know how easy that'll be to see, but it says be reasonable back there. It is up on my the podcast's merch site. And then of course, Rise Attire has the other new designs out on the Rise International site. So I'm going to pop both those links here in the chat. The first one, that is to, actually, they're already in the show notes. So that link right there goes to the Spreadshirt, storefront, where you can get this particular shirt. And then the Rise Attire stuff is in the next link, riseattireusa.com/INTL Cancel Code Tour. Mine being cancelcodetour.myspreadshop.com. All right. So we've got that all out of the way. Now, you might have noticed that last little clip in there before the Sweetheart Be Reasonable clip from, gosh, why am I forgetting what Total Recall? The clip right before that is from Network. Network is the movie Burning Bright and I are doing tomorrow night on Badlands Story Hour. And I watched it again last night. I think that was the third time I've seen it. I watched it for the first time probably 15 or 20 years ago, then probably saw it again about 10 years ago. So getting to see that movie again with all new eyes, man, that movie is amazing. And it came out in 1976, which means they conceived of it, wrote it, filmed it, finished with production, and then got it out by then. Usually a 2-year process on a short timeline. So this movie, conceptually at least, is 50 years old. And it's easy to say that it's ahead of its time. It certainly was ahead of its time relative to now, but it's been ahead of its time at every point in the past too, which means we've just been going through this same loop over and over again. And we'll discuss the movie at length tomorrow, obviously, but I want to start today's show with a clip. It's a few minutes long. It's 4 or 5 minutes long. And it is the major corporate owner of the media network UBS on which Howard Beale has his show. This is like bigger than just the CEO of the broadcast network. This is their umbrella company, the big owner, giving a speech to Howard Beale about how the world really works, breaking up his kind of normie understanding of the way the world works with political parties and elections and all that. And when I watched this the 2 times before this most recent viewing last night, I probably thought, okay, well, this is just a euphemism. He's just going overboard. We heard the kind of common jokes and refrains everywhere from back in the days of George Carlin on about how the politicians, they should just wear their corporate advertisements on their suit like they were a NASCAR driver. And you kind of think, oh, okay, I get it. He's making the point that some of these politicians are doing the bidding of corporations. Okay, I get it. But that's kind of a euphemism. He doesn't really mean that they're all owned, like fully owned. Of course, the Republicans and the Democrats, they're like cats and dogs. They can't stop fighting one another, always at odds. There's not a uniparty. These are 2 separate things. They have all their own desires. They're not operating together on behalf of the same masters ultimately. And of course, now we can see right through that and understand that's not a euphemism. It's not a extreme position on what things are. It's just how things are. And we know over the course of our lives that all of this has gotten worse and become more obvious. And it's probably become more obvious because it's gotten so much worse. But they were pretty clear about it 50 years ago. So to pretend that this just developed over the last 10 or 15 years, if you're my age, mid-40s, that's insane, right? You got to understand it's been going on since I was a child. This movie predates me, and it knew that the whole thing was going on. So it can't have just happened in the last 10 or 15 years as I came to notice it. It was clearly happening well before then. But with no further ado, let's go ahead and watch this clip from Sidney Lumet's network. And I suppose I should know the name of the actor delivering this spectacular monologue. But I don't. So give me just a second so I can set this up properly. And again, gosh, what a great movie this is. So Faye Dunaway is the female lead. William Holden plays Max Schumacher, who kind of runs the runs the news branch of UBS. Howard Beale is played by Peter Finch. And then this guy right here, oh, it's Ned Beatty. Wow. Arthur Jensen is the character's name. So this is Ned Beatty addressing Peter Finch, Arthur Jensen addressing the character Howard Beale.
Please sit down.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused. And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
Why me? Because you're on television, dummy. 60 million people watch you every night of the week, Monday through Friday.
I have seen the face of God.
You just might be right, Mr. Beale.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And a great and unique performance there by Ned Beatty. I love it. And it's hard to say how he's wrong. It's hard to call that a conspiracy theory any longer, isn't it? I mean, he's talking about global fascism, essentially. The state and the corporation have combined to become the same thing. The people are guided through a false reality where their only job is to obey. And if they are able to help the regime maintain its power and control and maintain the illusion cast over all of society, then they will be rewarded commensurate with how helpful they are, assuming that they never stop helping or become ineffective. And at that point, then their reputation and lifestyle will be reduced commensurate with how many problems they're causing. And eventually, you know, they try to just get you out of there altogether in whatever way possible. Takedowns, health problems, hits, who knows? Howard Beale eventually, well, you know, no spoilers. Well, whatever. It's a 50-year-old movie. Howard Beale goes on to do the work of Arthur Jensen and begins to lose ratings, and Jensen will not take him off the air. And this begins to mess with the people trying to do the news show because they want the big ratings on behalf of their advertisers and are not content. They're not able to contest Jensen directly. So they figure out how to murder Howard Beale on live television. For initially speaking what he believed to be the truth as much as he could relay it, and then eventually being told about much greater truths that he was then to speak and was then turned off and was then no good for the advertisers. Very interesting. And Jensen's goal with that program was some sort of grand communist utopia where all the trains run on time and everything is absolutely perfect. Is that the goal of global governance? Yeah, I mean, that's what they say it is. That's what they say the goal of the Great Reset agenda is. They need to get the world back in order so that everything will run smoothly and perfectly on their terms. Now, that's never going to happen. The communist utopia is nonsense. Okay, so good Lord. Things are happening in the chat. Hilarious. Okay, so let us continue with what I want to talk about today. And the first thing I want to talk about is this post from a journalist named Simon Atiba, or I should say a character named Simon Atiba. Simon Atiba, for the last few years, has played a White House press room reporter who always asks the most based and red-pilled questions to Jen Psaki. Well, maybe was she there in the Psaki era, or was she only there in the Karine Jean-Pierre? I don't know, but he couldn't get in trouble because he was Black and African. So it was very funny that he got to ask all the really difficult questions, and then they would attempt to shut him out of White House press conferences and censor him and whatever else. I mean, part of the info op. It's not like he's out there just blowing people's minds about everything election fraud related over the last few years. I haven't seen him talk about the Biden regime's illegitimacy or anything like that. But this post is fantastic. He said yesterday on X, formerly Twitter, it's so hard for people to realize that everything is fake. A stage play. Washington is fake. Press conferences are fake. The reasons for going to war are fake. Freedom of the press is fake. Democracy is fake. Freedom on X is fake. Every true thing is classified. Everything else is an illusion, just the appearance of reality. But it's hard to change people's minds. They cling to their childhoods and talk about illusions as if they were realities. What you have to do is try to believe the opposite of everything you think you know today. This is hard because we resist change. Change is hard. Kudos to you, my man. Well said. It's hard to see how he's wrong about any of that. That's for damn sure. That is right on the money. Wonderful work, Simon Atiba. I have no idea what your angle is, but that statement I can get behind 100%. It's all fake. It's all fake. It's constructed for you to believe that it's all true so that you go along with the program. It's really simple. They benefit from you going along with the program, no matter which brand of the program you choose to ascribe. Choose to ascribe to which you choose to ascribe. It's nice to at least attempt some proper grammar in the midst of, just talking normal. We don't have to make a big thing of it, but there are some habits, I don't know. I'm sure that you all probably have these own little tics and habits that you try over time to break. And, it's not like you beat yourself up for them, but we all have that growing process. My good friend, Zach Payne, Red Pill 78, the host of Red Pill News, he did a wonderful, wonderful interview with a man named Peter Tickton. Peter Tickton was a classmate of Donald Trump's, I believe in junior high and high school. I can't remember exactly. Zach's had him on a few times. I kind of got his backstory a few years ago, I think in the summer of 2022. But so he's a classmate of Trump's when they were young. He's known Donald Trump and apparently been a friend of Donald Trump throughout both their lives. And he is also an attorney who seems to be, I don't know about read into anything in particular, but he seems to know on a deep level some of the things that are going on right now. He was involved in the filing of Rico Grande, the civil RICO lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and Mark Elias and all of them for the Russiagate hoax. And he mentions actually in this interview with Zach that he had the opportunity to work with Kash as part of that filing, Kash Patel. So all that's really interesting because part of the Rico Grande theory, as it were, like the thing that I talk about, I don't think really anybody else does, is that the information from the special counsels is building out that civil RICO case as we go along. There are numerous unnamed John Does. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe there's a lawyer in the chat who can check me. But if I'm not mistaken, when you're doing a legal filing and you're not naming all of the John Does and all of the characters, then you just kind of put it in there as at all. And that describes an innumerable amount of John Does. So it could be 10, it could be 2,000. I don't know. But from some of the Durham stuff and some of the other stuff from the Department of Justice over time, stuff that Kash Patel may have access to, maybe privy to. And this is my interpretation of what's happening here, okay? Tickton didn't, I'm not saying Tickton implied this. I'm not saying Kash implied this. I'm trying to figure out what it means with my understanding of that civil RICO case and what was presented in it, which again was Russiagate stuff and this massive, well-orchestrated criminal enterprise to subvert first the campaign and then the presidency of Donald Trump, to commit this coup against the nation. It builds out a pretty large web of criminality. And that's the point of RICO. You're going after a criminal organization. Okay. The organization was formed for the purposes of committing criminal activity. And that's exactly what they did. It's not an organization like a company that does something criminal. It's that this group of individuals was put together. This organization, formal or informal, was put together in order to coordinate on committing crimes and advancing a criminal enterprise. Okay. And so that's what's being presented here by Tickton, or not being presented here by Tickton, but being presented in the Trump v. Clinton et al. Civil RICO, which I refer to as RICO Grande. So he's a classmate of Trump's, he's an attorney, and he's also working on some of the election fraud, election integrity stuff. There's a couple just brief clips that I want to play of Zach's interview with Tickton, though I do recommend listening to it. Now, it's not because I agree with everything Tickton says throughout the entire interview. He goes on to talk about Ukraine and some other stuff, and expresses some ideas that I frankly am not on board with. And maybe he's right, maybe I'm wrong, but it's not that I'm endorsing everything he says. I think it's a really great interview, particularly with the stuff related to the election fraud and over the course of time. But let's just take a look at a couple of these clips.
And, there's a lot that needs to happen over the next 2 years to eradicate them. And so one of the things we're finding is how they've been doing the cheating in terms of the votes, because I'm representing different people that should have won the elections, that lost the elections. And the estimates that I'm getting are that approximately 50% of the Democrats that are in the House don't belong there.
And this is in the U.S. House, or we're talking like the Florida state legislature?
No. I'm talking about the Congress, the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. About half of the Democrats that are there do not belong there.
Wow. I mean, I think everybody knows that it's bad. But when you hear a figure like that, I mean, it's a staggering number. And especially when you consider what's on the line for America and the amount of control that Congress has setting that direction. I mean, we've seen in the last couple of years just how bad things can get. And I think that we've reached this point now where after we witnessed what happened in 2020, people were perhaps reluctant to say there was cheating. I mean, I had people who really, I was very surprised that they couldn't see it. And now, as we move here into 2024, it's become quite clear to many people that 2020 was fraudulent. And now here in 2024, we're still seeing the same thing, but just on the down ballot races.
Right. You don't need to get into the nitty gritty for 2020. You just have to look at the obvious facts. You just have to look at the fact that we never had a state stop the count of the ballots before. And then 4 states, the 4 swing states that never had any apparent conversations between themselves, all stopped the count at the same time. Okay, things were very peculiar in 2020, and we know the election was stolen. Right. You could look at it's amazing. You got a camera on the roof of the counting room in Fulton County, Georgia, and we actually caught them. Okay, They've got tables that have aprons on them so that nobody can see what's under the tables. They say that there's a water main break. There was no such thing. Nothing like that had occurred, and so they got rid of everybody out of the building except for 4 people that stayed there, and they started pulling suitcases out from underneath the tables, and then they opened them up. They're full of ballots, and then they take those very ballots that were in those suitcases under the tables, and then they put them through the machines over and over and over again. And we're supposed to believe that, that was all right. That was no problem.
But your lying eyes deceive you, Peter. It's not, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Right. But now we know now where they're coming from, because that was always the question. Okay, I mean, we saw 2,000 mules. We know how they stuffed the ballot boxes, but we didn't know how they, who are these voters? Who are they putting in there?
Please tell the audience.
Well, it's almost hard to believe. They're imaginary.
Yes.
They're clones.
Yep.
And nobody knows this yet. You're one of the first shows that I'm speaking about this font. So, this is breaking news.
Okay.
And
so let's pause there because I don't want to just replay the entire thing. Ticton said that half of the Democrats in Congress are illegitimate. I would actually, if I get a chance to talk to Peter Ticton, I'll ask him this in particular. How do you know that any of them are legitimate? Is the assumption that they're legitimate until you can tell that they are illegitimate? Because I would suggest at that point, we are reversing the burden of proof on legitimacy for public representatives. I think that all of them should be able to prove that they actually won legitimate elections rather than us assuming the elections were legitimate until we can tell otherwise. And I think that, he might agree with that. I don't know. I think that his answer would probably be, well, these are just from having listened to the rest of the interview, these are the ones in the states where we can tell that this sort of fraud has occurred. And so he goes through and talks about, he's calling them clones here. What he means is that their information was cloned to create kind of these just imaginary people in the voter registries based on combinations with people's maiden names, various fragments of personal data combined with other fragments from other people, combined into all of these new combinations of people that are then in the voter registries. And then those registries are used to create the fake votes that go into the election. And maybe that is part of the system. I have really no doubt that it is. The 2000 Mules thing, I think the 2000 Mules thing the movie needs to be separated, and True the Vote need to be separated from the reality of ballot harvesting rings, geo-tracking, the Mark Zuckerberg ballot drop boxes, and whatever else. You don't need to believe in True the Vote. You don't need to believe in the 2000 Mules movie and whether or not what it depicts in that movie lines up correctly to understand that Nancy Pelosi, as part of the COVID relief packages, was demanding universal nationwide ballot harvesting and a ban on voter ID and a number of other things that all became key parts of the rigged 2020 election. Okay. So that's what 2000 Mules, despite any of the movie's problems, is still pointing at. Okay. 2000 Mules, the movie, and to some extent, True the Vote, are easier to dismiss than a lot of the elements of election rigging, which is why so much of the focus gets put on things like that. Now, again, I'm not disputing anything that Ticton knows about election fraud by pointing out that my faith in Dinesh D'Souza and some of the information presented there in the way it was presented, that doesn't affect my view on Ticton or the knowledge that the system was opened intentionally with these loopholes so that they could be exploited for purposes of rigging elections. Let's continue with Ticton for just another minute here, and then I want to show one or two other clips. All right, let's skip ahead. Maybe I got that part in. I thought there was one more thing there, but let's go right here.
There's always these different kinds of changes, but those are very insignificant in terms of what I understand in terms of the numbers.
Okay.
The real numbers are people that are alive that have been cloned. With, I mean, obviously the people haven't been cloned. With
apologies for that, guys. I realized that the sound wasn't, the video and sound weren't going through. Let's go back to right here. Apologies.
We don't know which way they voted, and so the way this has to be tested is to basically show that the whole system was unreliable.
Okay.
And you turn off or override or somehow get around the entire fraud prevention system, then the system's not reliable.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, you know, we're asking for a new election on this thing because we know it was, they were using these clones.
I mean, it seems like it's an undisputable argument that you have there. Do we know if these people, if the names are even real people? I mean, if they don't have a social, if they don't have a driver's license number, then are we even certain that they're real people?
Well, that's the thing about clones, is that they start off as real people.
Oh, okay.
And some of them could be dead people. Some of them could be people who have changed their names because they got married. To their women still do take their husbands' names,
right.
At least some women, and some women get divorced and go back to their maiden name and so on and so forth. So there's always these different kinds of changes, but those are very insignificant in terms of what I understand in terms of the numbers.
Okay.
The real numbers are people that are alive that have been cloned. With, I mean, obviously the people haven't been cloned. With their information in the computer has been cloned.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got, you know, I wouldn't want to put it up on a screen because it's got people's names.
Of course.
And they're not the ones that did it. They didn't decide I'm going to register more than once and I'm going to just change it a little bit so that I can have 2 registrations and vote. People don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was all done with algorithms.
And so he goes into a discussion on the algorithms. He says he has people around who have been able to break these algorithms and kind of figure out how it all works. He's very clear there about the cloning process and how they're creating essentially, you know, quote unquote, new people. He makes clear that he's not actually talking about cloning people in a kind of biological sort of way. But if we consider how much of our life is based online and how much of our reality is formed by what we see on television, whether it be through our actual television from a television channel or through a video game played on our television, an internet streaming show played on our television, which is now basically no distinction depending, you know, the relevant distinctions to make are who's putting that thing on the air and how is that person going about his or her job. The television presenter, are they reading a script? Are they getting paid by the same people who fund the mainstream media? Are they supporting the uniparty's agenda, the global regime's agenda? The stuff you read on your phone, the stuff you read in newspapers, it's all a part of that television projection. Believe this story, and we're going to support this story through a number of different mediums and through a number of different cultural avenues, whether it's mainstream television news media, or whether it's Hollywood movies or video games or social media campaigns, influencer campaigns. It's all the same story being presented. And it doesn't really matter how it's presented. If you then understand that those are what we imagine to be real people, we could see entire quote unquote people built out to support the reality of these clones as real people. All you would then need is a couple of social media profiles and some AI generated content. And virtually anybody who was to look these people up online would be like, oh, I don't know. I think that's probably a real person. I have a feeling the population of the world is actually a lot less than we are led to believe it is. Let me hit one more spot on here and then we can move on.
Solomon, who has done some incredible work from a different angle than Andrew on analyzing the various algorithms that are in play. He's essentially shown he's shown that he can predict the spread on these elections before they even occur based upon two numbers. It's very complicated. He's a super math genius, and I'm not able to regurgitate all of his work in 30 seconds. But this is somebody else I would also like to put you in touch with. I've actually put Andrew and Ed in touch previously. So for all I know, you guys have already spoken. But Nevada, there seems to be obviously a big problem there too.
Oh yeah, it's throughout. Look, we're talking about the cabal.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the globalists.
Yep.
And people think it's amazing. Because when you think about what they're doing and what's really going on, if you just hear about it and believe it, there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's too unbelievable to believe that this can actually be going on, that people can actually be doing what they're doing and taking over our country the way they took over our country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got back the Senate, the House, and the presidency, but they were all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And still, our whole educational system is gone. Our media is gone. I mean, so if you have, let's say, an organization like the World Economic Forum,
mm-hmm.
and they have their agenda, their 2030 agenda, and they talk, and you get people on board with them. I mean, they were started by Klaus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Klaus Schwab. I mean, so Klaus.
All right. So he seems to be taking a big picture approach, in terms of us getting back the presidency, the House, and the Senate. I guess we'll see if that's true. I'm not sure it actually means anything. I was going to discuss this later, but maybe now's the right time. Tom Cotton had this post today about getting, sorry, let me find this. Hold for processing. About getting the Trump's nominees through the Senate, as if he has some major sway on what happens there. It's so funny watching these political figures take credit for things that they're just clearly not doing. There's not some major Senate fight that Tom Cotton's going to lead the way to get President Trump's nominees placed in the administration. It's preposterous to even think that's possible. We're talking about people who are, what's the best way to describe them? I mean, they're clearly on some level under control. There's no way to imagine that these people are just actually the sorts of political figures we've always been led to believe political figures are. All of this is just happening naturally, spontaneously, organically in the world based on people's votes. Cotton said, I expect our Republican Senate is going to confirm all of President Trump's nominees. To which my reply was, of course, their alternative is to be exposed as utterly irrelevant. Of course, they're going to approve Trump's nominees. They don't have any choice on that. And we'll get to Donald Trump and his obvious position of influence in the world in just a few minutes. But the idea that the Senate is going to thwart Donald Trump's agenda from passing, all of this has already played out in every meaningful way. We are being caught up to an extent on an informational timeline, or it's possible that we are being held back on an informational timeline and being convinced to continue going along with this whole establishment bullshit narrative because that is what best benefits the regime. People said to me over the past few weeks, are you saying that they allowed Donald Trump to win even though he's the guy tearing them down? Why would they do such a thing? The answer is because it was the only, their best possible move. It's not like they have all the options available to them, they're in full control of everything. but they have certain elements of control in the media. They still largely have control over a big chunk of the minds of the American populace. And so if the people still believe that Joe Biden was just president for 4 years and that the government is still operating in a normal or seemingly normal and legitimate way, what are you going to tell them? They still believe this story. So if the story continues to be projected, maybe they can simply outlast Donald Trump and outlast MAGA while everybody takes a few incentives and grovels for treats here and there until everybody goes right back to sleep. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying that if I was them, that would be the strategy to pursue. Obviously, that would be the strategy to pursue because they need the people to be going along with their program to some degree. Now, again, we could all be getting dog walked into the supporting their program to the extent that we're still talking about any of this as real in the first place or regarding the necessity of the government as something immutable. But yeah, man, I can't imagine they have too much sway over anything. So Tom Cotton announcing that that President Trump's nominees are going to get through is just Tom Cotton ingratiating himself to Donald Trump and to MAGA. I don't look at that as anything. I mean, who cares? Let's continue forward. Donald Trump did an interview with Meet the Press and their host, Kristen Welker, who was one of the debate moderators in the 2020 fake election cycle and in this fake 2024 campaign cycle. What does it mean that Trump never conceded and Joe Biden pretended to be president for 4 years anyway? We'll go through this post after, but consider that as you listen to this. Where am I here? Hold for processing. Here we are.
Sir, I don't have to tell you this because you've talked about it. It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No. Why would I do that? But let me just tell you, when you say the country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the president.
But you're going to be the president.
No. I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president. I'm not. And he has been a divider. And you know where he divided it more than anything else, and it probably backfired on him, I think definitely, is weaponization. When he weaponized the Justice Department and he went after his political opponent, me, he went after his political opponent violently because he knew he couldn't beat him. And I think it really was a bad thing. And it really divided our country.
Sir, Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they are going around stealing elections, why
when you
didn't
say
they do it
Democrats
this
have
time?
control now
Of the White House.
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election? Since they have more power now.
Because I think it was too big to rig.
So you won't.
Too big to rig.
To the people who say that you're now directing your Justice Department to investigate 2020 and they want to move
I
on.
am very capable.
Is
I
that
think
a
Pam
good
is going to
use
be
of
great.
precious resources?
By the way,
is that what you
just
want
so
them to do?
Just so you know, I have the right to do that, but I'm not interested in that.
Oh, you're not. You're not going to do that.
I'm not interested. I have
Okay.
the absolute right. I'm the chief law enforcement officer. You do know that. I'm the president. But I'm not interested in that. You know what I'm interested in? Drilling and getting prices down and stopping people from pouring into our border that come from prisons and mental institutions.
Now, that is a very, very well handled response. And some people were responding, wondering if he meant that he's not interested in pursuing the truth of the 2020 election. That doesn't sound to me like what he was saying. I think he was just saying, I'm not interested in directing my Justice Department to go and make a thing out of this. I have no doubt that he wants to see those crimes prosecuted. And I have still no doubt that the truth about our elections is going to come out. The only concern I have about the truth of our elections coming out is whether or not that revelation is going to be stopped the same way many of these revelations are stopped, which is before the ultimate truth actually emerges. The important truth emerges. The important truth when it comes to our rigged and stolen elections is that elections are fake and that the government is illegitimate and that this is not how leaders in the world are chosen. That's the important truth about our elections. It's not that the 2020 election was rigged in favor of Joe Biden. That is a very, very minor truth claim relative to the big problem. And, you know, Tickton mentioned that a big percentage of the Democrat congressional caucus was illegitimate. What about the Republican congressional caucus? What about the rest of the uniparty? He didn't talk about the uniparty, and that's a disappointment. But, you know, not everybody has to be all the way there to where I am. And it's possible that I'm wrong here and there. I don't think I'm wrong about the presence of the uniparty, and I don't think I'm wrong about elections being rigged for the benefit of the uniparty. We can watch that happen throughout the primary process. The idea that only Democrats steal elections is crazy. But in regard to this particular video, I said, what does it mean that Trump never conceded and that Joe Biden pretended to be president for 4 years anyway? Well, that sounds an awful lot like treason. That sounds like the usurpation of a government, of the American government. Trump never conceded to the extent that was a real election in any way. And Trump never conceded. And the issues are still out there and unresolved. And somebody else stages an inauguration and then pretends to be president. What does it mean for the rest of our government that has forwarded the business and agenda of an illegitimate and unelected administration? And, you know, you could go down to the federal worker level with this if you wanted. I don't think we ultimately have to, you know, tar everyone with that brush. At least I hope not. But what does it mean that people went along and continued doing government work while an illegitimate president was obviously in office, having ignored the fact that the sitting president never conceded and that there were still open court cases and that it was clear that half the country, at least, understood that the election was stolen? What does it mean that they marched forward anyway? I said, it's time to think bigger about what has actually happened and how it must be handled. If there are allies, quote unquote, who've played along with that illegitimate government doing its business and implementing its agenda in order to reap the rewards, those are enemies and should be dealt with just as harshly. And I mean just as harshly as our enemies. And I think that that is a very supportable position that I don't anticipate needing to back down from. Pardon me for just a moment. Okay. Let us continue forward here. Today, I saw this just spectacular story about our friend Adam Shifty Schiff. We talked on the Devolution Power Hour on Saturday night about these blanket pardons and about how old Shifty was one of the names mentioned in consideration for being granted one of those blanket pardons. Some member of the fake news caught up with Adam Schiff walking through the halls of the citadel of our democracy and had this exchange with Shifty.
But can I just ask you about the presidential pardons? Do you think a preemptive pardon for you is warranted?
I've spoken on this before. I don't think the idea of a blanket pardon of some kind is a good idea, and I would recommend against it.
Even for yourself, have you communicated this to the White House?
I've communicated it publicly multiple times.
So old Shifty says he doesn't really want a pardon. He doesn't need a pardon, of course, because he never committed any crimes. Well, that is very, very strange. Kash Patel, I don't think, would agree with that. Adam Schiff was on the House Intel Committee and going out on MSNBC every night and talking about how he knew Donald Trump was actually compromised by foreign countries. And he had seen the intel, implying that he saw all of that in committee and then was going and leaking that to the news media under the assumption that he must actually know something based on the fact that he's on that committee, but just couldn't say what it was, of course, because it's all classified intelligence. Now, gosh, I can't remember. I think it was Trump. But I can't remember exactly who. A few weeks ago, we talked about people being held accountable for leaking to the press, doing espionage, taking classified intel and putting these narratives out to the press. They were basically that is espionage. They're laundering intel. Now, we can have another conversation about overclassification and how none of this stuff should be classified. But while we have this situation the way it is now, and with the public's reverence for classified information, thinking that it's really important, not understanding the overclassification and that all sorts of things are classified. The flip side of that overclassification is that if the public understands that all of this really important stuff is classified, it's not stuff that they're allowed to hear about. The public can't be given access to this information. Well, it makes it possible for a guy like Adam Schiff to go out there and claim anything, really anything, and then say it's based on classified information when he's asked to back it up and can't. So basically just doing the regime's bidding and committing espionage, and he still does not need a pardon, according to Shifty Schiff. Now, the blanket pardon thing, as we talked about a week ago after it was first mentioned, when Keith Olbermann posted claiming that 10 million pardons should be given out. I would love it if 10 million pardons were given out. Give us a map of all of these commies and exactly what they've done, or just pardon them all. Give us just the list of names, and we will probably have no problem filling out a good chunk of that immediately, and then understanding where exactly those webs go. I don't know if we'll be so lucky, but it's a great way of exposing all these names to the public and getting people to understand that something seriously wrong is happening there. But here's a fantastic story about old Shifty Schiff today. Man, there's so much going on in the last 5 days. This is why I don't like taking too many days off in a row, because it's so hard to catch up. But there's so much fun stuff happening. Here's Adam Schiff in the Hill. Newsom appoints Schiff to Senate to complete Butler term. 12/09/24. So that is today. Newsom, Gavin Newsom, a man who faced a recall election and then was kept in office as California governor due to an obviously rigged and stolen California election. California has the most ridiculous elections in the country. You can print a ballot out at home. I knew plenty of people who were receiving multiple ballots. They had the drop boxes, of course, don't need to date any of those things. They won't even let you show ID at the voting centers because, of course, they don't have their small precincts any longer. They have big voting centers. I voted in 2020 at the Hollywood Bowl. I took my mail-in ballot in, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll take that for you." And I go, "Oh, no, that's okay. I'll go ahead and rip it up. I want to vote here in person. So I'm going to rip this mail-in ballot up." I did that right in front of her. I took my ID out, gave it to her. She said, "Oh, no, we can't accept that." And they give you a piece of paper. "Hey, here's your ballot. It's a blank piece of paper. Go over to that iPad, attach the black box. Just make your choices. We promise they'll work." Then it prints you out a ballot, quote unquote. It prints you out a receipt of what you did in the iPad, supposedly. got a QR code. I take it. She says, put it in this machine right here. I put it in. The machine rejects it. She goes, oh, darn. All right, well, try this machine over here. I put it in that machine and it goes through. That's voting. I got to use my voice, my most foundational American right. I pressed some buttons on an iPad attached to a black box, said goodbye as I threw my receipt. I stuffed it in a little glass bottle and put a cork into that bottle. And then I tossed it into the ocean. And I said, farewell, my love. I hope you reach your destination on the far shores. I have now voted. Look how hard I did it. I voted so hard that I made the election in California too big to rig. Spoiler alert, narrator, it was not too big to rig. Yeah. So Kamala Harris was, when she left, when she was, quote unquote, inaugurated to be the real vice president of the United States of America, Gavin Newsom replaced her with, gosh, why can't I remember his name? I always mess him up with Alex Padilla. It's not Alex Padilla, is it? Let me see if my AI knows who that Adam Schiff has been installed yet, or already, I should say. Yep. Alex Padilla was installed by Gavin Newsom when Kamala was fake inaugurated as vice president. And now, and so then Dianne Feinstein or Steen was crypt keepered into the Senate. I have to get the visual evidence of her crypt keeperness. She was wheeled in. Everybody got to see in public that she was dead, which is always important, you know, because the public needs to know. Otherwise, they could just Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Queen Elizabeth, Jimmy Carter, keep her on ice for an untold amount of time, and the public would never know. So you got to force something like this. And the way to force it is by putting her out in public. And so they had whatever this is playing Dianne Feinstein or Steen. They wheeled her out to the public, let everybody know she was dead. And then they replaced her with a woman named LaFonza Butler. Gavin Newsom did that. So we have Alex Padilla and LaFonza Butler as our California senators. And the LaFonza Butler term ends today for whatever reason. She's only been in the Senate for a year. When did LaFonza Butler? Let me find this out. Hold for processing. When was LaFonza Butler? I guess we can say sworn in. It's so funny. The question prompts elected as senator. Well, she was never elected. October 3rd, 2023. So she served as California senator for just over a year. And this was the special election to replace her because she was resigning. Now she's resigned early. California Governor Gavin Newsom appointed Adam Schiff to the Senate to complete the rest of appointee Senator LaFonza Butler's term. The appointment means Schiff, who served in the House since 2001 and won election to the Senate last month, will begin work in the upper chamber several weeks before the start of the next Congress in early January. Butler replaced the late Senator Dianne Feinstein in October 2023 and said she would not run for a full term, opening the race up to Schiff and others. Now, they wanted Schiff to replace her. There was talk of Schiff replacing Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein. Back when they first took her corpse out and showed it to the American public. But instead, they appointed LaFonsa Butler. Schiff has emerged as, and then Schiff, he went on to defeat LA Dodger Steve Garvey, who was not particularly pro-Trump, but gained some momentum in Con Inc. establishment, Normie, California. I bet there's a much bigger MAGA contingent in California than people believe. But when they say that Orange County is deep red, Orange County is deep uniparty right. Let's not be ridiculous here. Now, again, the MAGA chunk is bigger. So those MAGA people out in California, all respect to you. Okay. I get it. I understand how it is out there. I started my show and started speaking out about all this stuff right in the middle of Hollywood. And I was fairly popular there. So, my entire social reputation and social network that I had spent 20 years building was immediately eradicated. So I get it. I get how hard it is. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to slight you in any way, but the California Republican contingent, the kind of Reagan Republican thing out in California, is Normie Con Inc. establishment Republican. That is not, that's the GOP establishment and elite, not MAGA. So the Garvey thing, I mean, Steve Garvey is a baseball player. I don't care because I'm not a Dodger fan. And he was kind of, 10 years before my time. Really? I don't care about that. California's elections are fake. There was nothing keeping Adam Schiff out of there. And even if there was never a fake election held, you can imagine that Schiff would have been appointed in this same way. He is there to be in the Senate at the end of this term. He was removed from the House Intel Committee. I wonder if he will be placed in the Senate Intel Committee, or at least be privy to certain privileged information by virtue of his position in the Senate that he couldn't get in the House because Mike Johnson's there. And in the Senate, we've got Mitch McConnell and then eventually Thune and Chuck Schumer. So Chuck Schumer is the one that directs the minority and appoints people in the minority. I think that will get Schiff on Senate Intel if that's where they want him. And speaking of Senate Intel, it's going to be interesting seeing what happens with Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio has been on Senate Intel for a long time. Now he's being removed from the Senate to be placed as Secretary of State. And Secretary of State kind of is the liaison between the global intel community and the White House administration. So Senate Intel would be the Senate liaison between the intel community. He's kind of just making a parallel move in some sense, although now under the watchful eye of the Trump administration, potentially, if he gets in. Maybe these are, and again, you got to always understand in the background of all these appointments and all of the nominations and the hearings and everything else, everything is an ongoing negotiation between one side and the other side, between the uniparty side, the global regime side, and then that MAGA America First side, the sovereign nationalist side. And this is happening worldwide. So if they have to agree to some seeming concessions because that's what advances the ball down the field, then that's what they do. And instead we have Con Inc. taunting MAGA every time. Why is Donald Trump selling out this way or that way? Hey, worry about Trump last, Ron DeSantis simps. I don't need you to tell me who's uniparty. But that's, of course, what these clowns do. So we'll see what happens with Marco Rubio and what Rubio's ultimate character is, right? I don't think anybody thinks that Rubio is hardcore MAGA, but at least Rubio's been on Truth Social for a few years. There's something going on there. So we'll see what Adam Schiff ends up doing. Let's just continue with this. It's not a very long article. Schiff has emerged as one of President-elect Trump's top critics in the House. He led Trump's first impeachment and has openly said his rhetoric reflects dictator talk. Who cares? Butler announced her resignation effective Sunday, and Schiff was appointed by the governor. In a statement, Newsom highlighted Butler's lifetime achievements and accomplishments while filling in for Feinstein. LaFonza has never shied away from fighting for what's right. She works not for recognition, but for the greater good, a commitment that began long before her time in the Senate and will continue beyond it. Thank you, Senator Butler, for your dedication and service and for honoring the life and legacy of the late Dianne Feinstein, a legacy I'm confident Senator-elect Schiff will also carry forward. Oh, yes, I'm sure he will as well. I'm sure that he will have Chinese spies all around him. Schiff will enter the Senate along new Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey. Governor Phil Murphy appointed Kim to the Senate on Sunday, too. What in the world? I didn't even see that. Phil Murphy appoints Senator Kim. Let's take a quick look at this. Because that's very interesting. Actually, let's stop this and then we'll go to that. The new California senator, appears to be a target for Trump, even as the Democrat appears to want to work across the aisle in his new position. Working across the aisle and being a target for Trump or an enemy of Trump and MAGA are not mutually exclusive, as the Hill attempts to make them here. With an understanding of the uniparty, Adam Schiff working across the aisle is utterly meaningless. Schiff has maintained he will not be intimidated by Trump, but President Biden is reportedly considering offering Schiff a preemptive pardon in light of the president-elect's threats to go after his political enemies. Schiff has said he does not want a pardon for Biden because he has more confidence in our system to withstand potential abuses by Trump. Well, going after Schiff would not be a potential abuse. It would be accountability for actual abuses. Here is the Phil Murphy, New Jersey story. This is from Fox News, reprinted on MSN. Democratic governors appoint incoming California and New Jersey senators 3 weeks early. Governor Phil Murphy announced on Sunday that he appointed Kim to the U.S. Senate following the official certification of the 2024 election results by the State Board of Canvassers and Senator George Helmy's resignation on Thursday. Helmy, a former chief of staff to Murphy, was sworn into the Senate in September after Senator Bob Menendez was convicted in a federal corruption trial and resigned from the Senate a month prior. So the Bob Menendez takedown worked out just fine for them to be able to simply appoint a new senator and then another new senator once the 2024 election results were certified. Amazing. Does it have anything else about Helmy here? Or about Kim, sorry. I'm a little bit stunned. Hold for processing. I'm a little bit stunned that I was not all over this development. But okay, so we have 2 senators in there in place of interim senators. Why? Why didn't they just fill out or finish out the next 4 weeks? Something going on here. I want to know what it is, okay? Why couldn't those outgoing senators take whatever votes? It seems like this might be a need for access to information or preemptive something when it comes to the certifications upcoming. I don't know what else. There's got to be something. Next Tuesday, by the way, December 17th is the date that the electors meet in the states and the Electoral College vote becomes certified. Is there going to be any mayhem or chaos caused there? I suggest that there could possibly be something like that. And maybe we'll get to it a little bit later on I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but today or tomorrow, to preview, it seems like the Daniel Penny issue, and he was acquitted today. Daniel Penny is the guy that was protecting people on the subway and choked out a black guy and killed him, apparently. I mean, all this is an op. Operation. He's been acquitted. And now New York's BLM figure, character, Hawk Newsom, not to be confused with Hawk Tua. He's very angry, and I'll get to that video later if we get there, otherwise tomorrow. But it seems like they're planning a BLM Antifa to begin this week, and one would think that it would be a good sort of thing to have to cover whatever malfeasance they might attempt with the Electoral College vote next week. Are we going to see an inversion of what we saw in 2020 and 2021? And I would suggest that we might. Let me check in with the chat for just a second, because I know that there was a Rumble rant there. Kara Maga, $10. Love your insight. Thank you very much, Kara, for that support, both financially and emotionally. The best is yet to come says, did you catch the Mike Benz interview with Rogan? And yes, I certainly did. And it was a very good interview. Now, again, man, there are places where I wonder why Mike Benz is not going further. And we don't have to get into them. I like Mike Benz. I like the op. It's all good. If it's an op, people need to know this stuff. If this is the delivery system, then fine. I don't expect he's going to go all the way on everything. It seems to me like he knows a lot more than he lets on. And he is so thorough and adept at laying things out piece by piece by piece that I don't know. Very professional. Sup CHG 177 JK just became a monthly supporter. Thank you very, very much for that. I would encourage you guys, if you are thinking about doing something like that, to do it on Substack, because then you get the subscriber stream, access to the subscriber stream and whatever. Curtis Good, $2. I see you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So Shifty Schiff and Kim, these guys are now, quote unquote, senators in the wholly illegitimate Senate. I mean, senators should not be elected in the first place. We should go popularly elected, I should say. We should go all the way back to the Constitution. And if we need to go back further, we go further. But senators being popularly elected, all of this bullshit, all of these layers of the false reality on top of our government, including and especially elections, they have to be removed. The idea that Gavin Newsom had appointed both of California's senators to the Senate is insane. And the idea that he's now placing Adam Schiff, as a result of these fake elections that Adam Schiff, quote unquote, won, into the Senate 3 weeks earlier so that he can begin his term now, is insane. We're going to have to see how all that shakes out and what it ultimately means. But I don't want to spend too much more time on that issue. Want to hit this really briefly here. Laura Trump has resigned from the RNC.
The latest on President-elect Trump announced.
Michael Strahan, a defensive lineman for the New York Giants, is now Good Morning America's newsreader. What? I mean, watch Network and you will see, just have, maybe not even see, all of you know, you will have affirmed for you the absurdity of all this. RNC co-chair Laura Trump to step down amid speculation about Florida Senate seat. Ron DeSantis would need to choose a successor to Marco Rubio. Laura Trump, the daughter-in-law of President-elect Donald Trump, whom he tapped to co-chair the RNC for the 2024 election cycle, said she intends to step down from her position. The move comes amid mounting speculation that she could be tapped to fill an upcoming Senate vacancy in Florida, whose Senator Marco Rubio has been nominated for Secretary of State. The job I came to do is now complete, and I intend to formally step down from the RNC at our next meeting, says Laura Trump. Congratulations, Laura Trump. I hope, she says, it is something that I would seriously consider about the Senate seat. If I'm being completely transparent, I don't know exactly what that would look like, and I certainly want to get all of the information possible if that is something that's real for me. But yeah, I would 100% consider it. And it's good for Laura Trump. If by completing her mission in the RNC, she means that she has overseen all Republican attempts to rig elections on behalf of the Uniparty and is prepared to expose the corruption at the RNC and the corruption in our elections, then wonderful. And if Ron DeSantis nominates her, appoints her, I should say, to the Senate seat, then great. That does not change any of my opinions about Ron DeSantis. I would be very interested to see if Laura Trump is immediately placed on the Senate Intel Committee. Maybe we'll have Laura Trump replace Marco Rubio on Senate Intel and have Adam Schiff put on Senate Intel. That would be fantastic. Give me 1 second. Hold for processing. I want to see who is on the Senate Intel Committee right now. So we have on the Democrat side, gosh, man, so annoying. The AI just gave me the two names, Mark Warner and Marco Rubio, because they're the chairs of the committee. And it's not giving me the rest of the members. Wikipedia has the chairs listed. Okay, here we go. The members right now on the majority side, the Democrat side: Mark Warner, Dianne Feinstein, Ron Wyden, Martin Heinrich, Angus King, who is technically, I believe, an independent or was, Michael Bennett of Colorado, Bob Casey, who is leaving, Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, John Ossoff, the illegitimate senator of Georgia, and Mark Kelly, the illegitimate senator of Arizona. I mean, they're all illegitimate, obviously. So Bob Casey is out. Dave McCormick has taken his seat, the Republican. So perhaps they'll just put Adam Schiff right in there. In addition to Rubio, we've got Jim Risch, Rhino Susan Collins, Tom Cotton, supposed Rhino, although I'm starting to think twice about John Cornyn just because of the way the narratives were handled around who the majority leader, the majority leader was going to be, and some of his comments since could just be playing a strong conning hand, but we'll see. Jerry Moran of Kansas, James Lankford, the author of the Unipartisan Immigration Reform Package, and Mike Rounds of South Dakota. So there are some spaces. We'll see who fills those spaces. If Laura Trump takes Marco Rubio's position on Senate Intel, that would be very, very interesting. And I think it will be a great tell to watch John Thune's appointments and see who ends up on which committees. We still have about 4 weeks, probably exactly 4 weeks until that happens, although maybe earlier. So January 3rd, maybe January 3rd, maybe it'll happen right away. But 4 weeks would be the first Monday after they're all quote unquote sworn in, but the business may be handled before then. So interesting. We shall see how that works. The appointments, especially to Intel, will be major tells, I think, that we should pay a lot of attention to. Let's continue forward here. So over the weekend, Donald Trump went to France for the reopening of the Cathedral of Notre Dame 5 years after a fire took out a big portion of it. And then we were shown all of these communist brutalist designs. Hold for processing. I have to get a picture of this. What were some of the proposed designs of Notre Dame's repairs? They were trying to make it look like some weird, I don't know, modern art dystopian nonsense. I hope they didn't actually do that. Man, I'm finding all these crazy memes. They were going to do this weird glass cage inspired. I don't know. I'll find out later. Maybe we'll discuss tomorrow. But Trump went for the reopening, and it was an unusual affair, to say the least. I mean, the eyes of the world were certainly on it. I would say this was broadcast worldwide as a major event. I want to show you this lovely picture. You know, some of the architecture is gorgeous. The way the thing looks inside is incredible. You know, some people are like, this is some weird satanic pagan ritual. And, you know, I would never say that I'm in tune with all of the kind of spiritual esoterica of the cabal and the things that are happening. So I can't, you got to love the Ukraine colors right here. Is this a Rothschild knocking at the door with a giant scepter? I mean, that it is not blasphemy to say that that scepter looks ridiculous. Okay. Even if this was all perfectly above board in a Christian sense, and there wasn't any weird pagan ritual or imagery or mythology in any of these proceedings, that shit's still weird. If someone wants to correct me and be like, that's actually an ancient biblical artifact, you bastard, I will accept that example of my own unforgivable ignorance. But let's take a look at Donald Trump from this event, because it was absolutely, some of it was really stunning. And he's posting these things, by the way. It's not me doing this. Let me just be clear that this is Donald Trump. Now, for the people listening to the audio, you may have the unfortunate experience of not understanding what's going on throughout this time, but these are different greetings. It's when Trump first arrives at the cathedral, and various handshakes with Emmanuel Macron, and the introduction of Volodymyr Zelensky at one. So this is Trump from Truth Social on Saturday. Let's first start with this one. I'm going to speed it up just to 1.25 for the sake of time here. But Donald Trump says, a great honor. Thank you. And then this is the video of his arrival. So that's number one. Trump just absolutely manhandling Manny Mac, and Macron keeps attempting to look as though he is physically kind of in charge of the situation. He's trying to pull weird dominance moves on Donald Trump, and Trump is playing along, by the way. Trump's doing it back to him. Everybody was making fun of Donald Trump having a hard time lifting up that Fiji bottle and those little glasses of water up to his mouth with two hands a few years back. And now Trump is just like flexing the deltoid right there, just taking Manny Mac's hand and just lifting it up to his shoulder. It's like he's doing like shoulder lifts on a cable system. That was very impressive shoulder strength for Donald Trump. Obviously a hero's greeting, a king's greeting in France, as it should be. He's wearing the gold tie here. This is also a Trump post. He, quote, truthed himself here and posted this atop the same thread.
Five years later, and you were at that time present. I just say it's a great honor for French people to welcome you. 5 years later, and you were at that time present for the first time, and I remember the solidarity and your immediate reaction. So, welcome back again.
Thank you
We
very
are
much.
very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Very great honor. And we had a great relationship, as everyone knows. We accomplished a lot together. And the people of France are spectacular. I guess it's one of our largest groups in the United States, French people. And we respect them and we love them. Very talented people, extremely energetic people, as you know very well.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to be here. We had a good time together, and we had a lot of success, really great success working together on defense and offense too. And it certainly seems like the world is going a little crazy right now, and we'll be talking about that. Thank you very much for being here.
Merci beaucoup.
All right. Apologies for the skip ahead there. Or skip back, I guess I should say. So Donald Trump manhandling Manny, and one more of those. We have to do it. This one is also interesting. This is where Zelensky comes in at the end.
You know the place. You remember?
I remember.
What do you want to drink?
Anything you have, Coke is fine.
Coke? Coke or cool one?
Regular is fine.
Welcome back again.
Thank you.
We are very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Very great honor. Very happy to see you. Nice to see you. How are you? Very happy to see you.
So Manny Mac offers him a Diet Coke, and Trump said, regular's just fine. I just want to propose conspiracy theories about them having a Diet Coke ready to go for Donald Trump, a la the Princess Bride situation, or any other, great movie where the drink was already poisoned. They're going to give Trump the poisoned Diet Coke, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to do regular Coke this time. Why don't you drink the Diet Coke, Manny Mac? And then Zelensky comes into the room with a big smile on his face, and Donald Trump and the comedic actor from Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, exchange a very warm greeting with a very neutral handshake. Donald Trump seeming like nothing but happy to see Volodymyr Zelensky. And we'll get right back to the Ukraine of it all in just in 1 second. But there's one more Trump video that Trump posted on his own Truth Social. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is from Citizen Free Press, actually. One more video from France. Yanked him. Pulled him off balance. Pulled him off balance again. Okay. So now, you know, it's not like I love to watch men play dominance games with their handshakes, but it's clear what he's doing. And he pulled Manny Mac off balance multiple times. That is if that's not a sign, I don't know what could possibly be a sign. Some people just don't believe that anything has any significance other than the surface level interpretation or what the media is willing to admit as far as significance goes. But man, oh man. Mimi in the chat just said, so glad you mentioned your Substack. I just subscribed. Thank you very much, Mimi. And yes, the Substack subscription is what gets the invite to do the interactive live stream where I will sit here and answer people's questions. I end up oftentimes just doing a normal episode because a lot of people don't ask questions in the Substack comments, and that's all good. If people don't have questions, that's all good. But you're more than welcome to propose topics, send articles. I can't say I'm going to go through like entire long things about any given point or, you know, read people's long posts just so that I can serve as their ventriloquist dummy or anything. I'm certainly not going to be doing that. But if people have questions, more than welcome to ask them there. I do that so that I can provide some kind of added bonus for paid subscribers because they do legitimately help me survive and have for the last few years. So I try to find a model where I can afford my life while also keeping my content free. And to be perfectly upfront and honest, if in a couple of months the information landscape does not change and it seems clearly that there's not real elections being sought, accountability for stolen elections being sought, if Twitter is still not a free speech environment and does not allow myself or my friends to participate in the ad revenue model or to even accept subscriptions from people who want to support us on that platform, then I'll probably just make everything private and initiate only a pay model. And, you know, if people have issues with that because they have financial issues, I will at that point welcome people to contact me and do my best to give a year subscription or something. I don't want to exclude people on the basis of money, but I'm not just going to sit here giving things away so that they can be repurposed or, barred from the conversation while other people are able to repackage that stuff and give out the Con Inc. normie version of it. Aquis Lux says, you are so smart, it's hard to ask you questions. And I was trying to determine whether or not me reading that comment would be seen as self-serving. And I guess it's fine if it is. Come on, man. Don't say that. Also, first of all, I'm not. Second, if nobody asks questions, then I don't have any way of checking myself aside from the exercises I go through constantly to do exactly that. And also I want the questions, man. People, there's no stupid questions. Okay. I want people to understand what I'm talking about. All right. Like being understood is why I take the time to explain these things rather than just try to make emotional appeals the way Con Inc. Media does. I'm not trying to get people to agree with my positions. I'm trying to get you to understand the thought process so you can come to your own conclusions. Italian Stalini says, Poso was stealing your shit today. Really? What did he steal of mine today? I kind of enjoy that about Poso, because Poso initiates public narratives. And, you know, it would be better if he could just have me on his show so that I could explain these things. But for the time that that's not going to happen, he seems to do at least a pretty good job of hat tipping when he does that stuff. Like, he's gone on and said, "You sound vaccinated," before, and he did it like the day after I left Twitter. So, you know, I totally see the good of Poso, and I don't know, man. Maybe we'll see in the future. I'm always open. I keep a watchful eye on these people. I know he's part of an info op. He knows he's part of an info op. At least he's the closest at admitting it. You know, I'm more concerned about people who are part of info ops and begin their show each day telling the public that they're getting the whole truth and nothing but the truth, like Tucker Carlson does, or people who play dumb all the time, like Joe Rogan does, or people that pretend that they're our friends when they're obviously our enemies, like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Weimar. Let us continue with Donald Trump, peacemaker in France. How many silly ways can I pretend to have a French accent? Here is Donald Trump making a statement after, I believe, right after the event, December 7th, 2:51 p.m. our time. So this would be the evening in France. Crushing it. Oh gosh, another one. Big smile on him, no smile on the other two. And then he goes, "Boss Manning, Emmanuel Macron." I had that marked as a statement. And I guess I blew that one. So sorry for my inaccurate setup there. He did call Manny Mac's wife beautiful. He said, "Oh, you're so beautiful." Oh man, Candace Owens, that is the same wife of Emmanuel Macron that Candace Owens has widely publicized as a man. Now, is Emmanuel Macron's wife a man? I sure as hell don't know, but I do know that Donald Trump just called her beautiful. Candace Owens the other day tweeted out, "Should I run for president with Thomas Massie in 2028, or should I wait for 2032? Well, first off, Candace, don't you understand that we are already groveling for a J.D. Vance presidency in 2028? We have already groveled our way into handing J.D. Vance the presidency and anointing him as our forever ruler. So you're not going to have a chance to run in either of those years." Also, Thomas Massie, what? Why are you and Thomas Massie part of the same info op? Isn't that so strange that Thomas Massie is everybody's best friend despite being a Ron DeSantis supporter? And, you know, I reposted the clip from Wednesday's episode. A lot of people didn't listen on Wednesday because that was the subscriber stream. That episode is now available if you are not a subscriber, up on the Substack and on the Rumble channel. Okay? So you can go back and listen to that. But I also posted a clip from that. By the way, this is hilarious. This is Trump chapstick that someone gave me at a GART that I'm fidgeting with in my hand here. I used to do this thing in college where I would be spinning my ballpoint pens until I was able to have them spin in a total 360 over and over again. And I imagine that I probably drove my professors crazy with that, but I did not care because it was accounting class and nothing could have been more boring as far as I was concerned. I'm sure many people are excited by accounting. Now I've entirely lost my train of thought. Candace Owens, the Con Inc. thing. So I reposted this. We talked about Ron DeSantis and some of what was happening in Florida. And I kind of gave one of the ways that I think about this situation as if Ron DeSantis was never supposed to be Florida governor from 2018 to 2022. I don't believe that he was. I believe Andrew Gillum was supposed to be governor, and Donald Trump hijacked that entire scenario and put Ron DeSantis in there. I believe that Ron DeSantis was supposed to be in there to be the anti-COVID warrior in Congress rather than the guy that locked down Florida. And in Congress, he would have taken Marjorie Taylor Greene's role. Marjorie Taylor Greene was just hired to play Ron DeSantis. Filing the impeachments of Joe Biden. Ron DeSantis would have then run for governor in Florida after the Andrew Gillum scandal broke, where he was photographed on the floor looking like George Floyd amongst fast food containers and drug paraphernalia in his underwear, photographed supposedly after a night's dalliance with a gay escort. Ron DeSantis would have swept into the Florida governorship on a red wave had Donald Trump not stayed in the game and had Ron not been governor at the time. And Ron was already creating his presidential run well before, a year before he was reelected as Florida governor in Florida's fake elections. And then the path just moves forward from there. Ron DeSantis would have been America's governor. He would have been the hottest Republican superstar in the country, going after COVID in the House, going after Biden in the House, impeaching Biden in the House, being the guy who would restore dignity to Florida after the Andrew Gillum scandal. So it's entirely possible that Ron could be just a Con Inc. op. And I think that we could easily be seeing that continue right now. And so when you look at characters like Thomas Massie and Chip Roy, who were all in on Ron DeSantis and then supported Donald Trump for a little while and are now just, doing their thing. Yeah, you might be right that it's all kayfabe. You might be right. I say it every single time. Okay. I'm not telling you that it's this way and not the other way. I'm just telling you that it's worth looking at it in other ways, because you can't be sure that it's all kayfabe. You can't just go around giving people the benefit of the doubt because the TV made you like them. And that is the only relationship with Ron DeSantis. He hasn't actually done anything. Okay. He hasn't done any MAGA thing in Florida. He has passed certain legislation with quote unquote Republican supermajorities gained through stolen elections, rigged and stolen elections in Florida. They lost the Jacksonville mayorship. How do you do that with Joe Biden as president and America's governor, Ron DeSantis, running Florida? All the Republicans moving into Florida because of Ron DeSantis. So, the Con Inc. op is still very much there. I don't know how anyone denies the existence of that whole thing. And it should be seen as a direct threat. These people come to you in disguise as allies while supporting the enemy. And all anyone can say through their actions and their words, and all anyone can say is, that's all kayfabe to wake up the normies. Well, the normies aren't awake. They're still doing it. How much longer does it last? Everybody said the election, you can't say that. We have to win this fake election. Stop saying that. You're causing disunity. I want to cause disunity. Okay? There's no reason to unify with your enemy. People with the same principles and the same agenda and the same goals and the same morals align due to all of that. They don't need to align because they both have little R's next to their names. Okay? We shouldn't want to align with any of these people until they align with MAGA. Do something for MAGA. Sacrifice. Make it clear that you are actually on board rather than just a TV character who is still looking out for your own benefit. And I hope some strings have been cut. But unless they're being totally controlled, then they're still acting of their own accord, which means they either can't figure out the truth or know the truth and don't say the truth. So why would we align with them? And of course, let me see if I can just pull up one episode of Tucker Carlson anywhere and just get his intro. His intro is unbelievable. And anyone who says that he is just trying to wake up the normies with this shit, man, I think that you are leaving yourself wide open to some very obvious problems in the future. Because his first, oh man, this is so funny. His Lavrov interview is actually really great, not because of Tucker, it's Lavrov. And I'm, again, not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that there's not some good explanation for why he is important. This all could be a good op. I am not denying the possibility of that. I'm just suggesting people take a look another way. Let's just try to see if it works.
Really an amazing story and unexpected. So why did you build it for you?
Oh man.
Prayers prayed. We were no religious app or meditation app or wellness app or workout app had ever cracked the top 10 in the App Store before. And this past Lent, we were number 1, which was crazy. So it was the first time.
I want to find his Spotify and see if I can get it on there. I'm very disappointed it wasn't on there. He basically declares that he is absolutely not a gatekeeper and is telling the truth to the best of his ability. And then in every episode, invariably, he talks about some intel community source that he has and never names the source, and then just proceeds to say an intel person told me this. It's just so ridiculous and such a preposterous act. And I know it's to wake up the normies. I get it. Let's hear this.
Welcome to the Tucker Carlson Show. We bring you stories that have not been showcased anywhere else. And they're not censored, of course, because we're not gatekeepers. We are honest brokers here to tell you what we think you need to know and do it honestly. Check out all of our content.
Is that the truth? In his statement where he says we are not gatekeepers and we're telling you the truth, we're honest brokers. This has never been seen anywhere. No one else is talking about Sergei Lavrov. We've been talking about Sergei Lavrov for years while we are censored and barred from the public conversation. So, I don't have Tucker Carlson's audience. So maybe it hasn't been talked about in the mainstream, but why hasn't it been talked about in the mainstream? It's not because there's not a market for it. It's not because people don't want to know this stuff. Now, you might say that the market dictates that people want the glossy production, okay? And they want to be told these things by TV characters with whom they believe they've developed a relationship of trust, or at least they trust the TV character. The TV character clearly does not give a shit about them because the TV characters are lying all the time. Now, despite all of that, couldn't Tucker Carlson just lead his show off with saying, the mainstream has barred conversation with characters like Sergei Lavrov and discussions about the things that Sergei Lavrov is probably about to tell you. And I would like to be the first person to introduce this person to the mainstream American audience. I would suggest you look for other people who've been talking about this guy for years. No, he doesn't do that. I mean, and by the way, this is just like me riffing, but I think I could probably figure out something he could say that's much better than that to make the point. But these people don't have the alternative media figures or people from the truth community on their show. They have people from the info op on their show. Tucker Carlson in that intro has himself in all of his rugged outdoorsman wear. It's the opposite of his bow tie, khaki, blue blazer, and loafers, Northeastern Liberal Arts College wear. That was what all the private school kids who I went to college with wore. All the lacrosse players wore Tucker Carlson's exact outfit all the time. But now he's a woodsman because he lives at this beautiful cabin in Maine. And again, I really like Tucker Carlson. I want him to be a good guy. This is not just a knock on him, but come on, man. He's got a picture there with Nayib Bukele. Like, it's an info op. It's an operation. Okay. And if it's not a bad operation, why aren't the normies awake yet? It's been 4 years of waking up the normies. Hey, man, maybe they need to learn things really, really slow. That is what I'm always told. I believe that that is a downright insult to my fellow Americans and to any grown adult looking to take care of himself or herself and his or her family. That is an insult that they're just not ready to understand the truth. Not like we are. All us people saying they're waking up the normies. They're waking up the normies. Oh, totally waking up the normies. Everybody is always waking up the normies, just like this right here. This meme that I made. Let's stop that New York Post article for just a second. Please, will you wake up the normies? All the normies waiting for their normie friend. See this? Normies masked as real people waiting for the real person masked as a normie. We can't wake up, or the NPC, real person masked as an NPC. We can't wake up until you wake up. It's very sad. Wake up, normie. Please wake up. Please wake up so the rest of us are allowed to wake up, because we have to stay back here with you forever, waking you up. You're not woken up yet. I guess we must be wrong. No, we're not. You're just too stupid. It's not that the people with audiences of millions lie to you nonstop around the clock, year after year after year, and get paid $1 million a week for it. It's that you're too stupid for us to tell you the truth. So we're going to keep lying to you just like everyone else does. What in the world is this? This is a commercial. Oh, gosh. New York Post. Trump says Zelensky is ready for peace as he dishes to post on meetings with world leaders and Jill Biden. Oh, gosh, that reminds me. I forgot to share the Donald Trump, Jill Biden post. Man, oh, man. Trump was just crushing it with the influencing over the weekend. And the trolling. What a funny event this weird church ceremony was. And again, no slight to church ceremonies, but let's be honest about what that was. It was just a very, very strange info op. Come on. Trump went on a posting spree yesterday. So I've lost a bit of that. It's hard to get all the way down to the proper posts here. Hold for processing. There we are. Finally. Finally, it has arrived. Donald Trump yesterday on Truth Social taking this meme picture of himself talking to Jill and Ashley Biden as they stare along lovingly. That picture was mocked up to look like a fragrance ad for a fragrance that Donald Trump is selling called Fight, Fight, Fight. A fragrance your enemies can't resist. Here are my new Trump perfumes and colognes. I call them Fight, Fight, Fight because they represent us winning. Great Christmas gifts for the family. Go to gettrumpfragrances.com. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And apparently a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to Ashley and Jill Biden, who are obviously big fans of Donald Trump. I wonder if it's because Donald Trump has somehow been a catalyst for ultimately saving Joe and Hunter from far worse fates and giving them a chance to redeem themselves before it's all said and done. It is not a sure thing by any measure, but it's at least a theory worth considering. Back to the New York Post. And by the way, because I see the chat discussing it, one last word on Tucker Carlson. Like it's definitely an op. It's okay that it's an op. All right. There's some way to wind that op down, but if the op never gets wound down and there's no accountability, and Tucker can take accountability of himself. I'm not suggesting there should be any external accountability. I don't believe he's committed crimes, although it's possible that he has. But you got to, at some point, stop saying that there's no gatekeepers here and we're telling you all the truth. It's ridiculous. The New York Post and this article. President-elect Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is ready for peace as he dished on his meetings with world leaders and Jill Biden during his trip to Paris for the reopening of Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I guess. Notre Dame is the college. By the way, I wish I had a picture of this. Maybe there is a picture. You got the comedic actor still in his sweatsuit, and he wore the sweatsuit to their trilateral foreign policy meeting, and he wore the sweatsuit. Gosh, where is he? He wore the sweatsuit into the cathedral. Trump also looked like a boss with with Prince William, the Prince of Wales. Ezra Cohen on Twitter said that his brother should be deported from the U.S. Why wasn't the king there? Trump also took some pretty dominant body language with the British royals and much more neutral body language with the Belgian royals. Again, worth noticing, just because the body language thing was a clear sign and something worth noticing. So Volodymyr Zelensky wore his sweatsuit to this beautiful cathedral for this massive event where the world's eyes would be upon it. And they were discussing peace, not Joe Biden bringing Ukrainian and Russian peace, but Donald Trump doing it with the French as the host. And usually the host nation is being in some way the guarantor of the peace process, or the facilitator of that peace process. So Manny Mac, on behalf of the French, is being put in that position for Europe, apparently. The incoming president revealed Sunday details of his conversations with world leaders on his first trip abroad since winning a second term, including a trilateral meeting with Emmanuel Macron and Zelensky. He wants to make peace, Trump told the Post in a phone interview. That's new. Now, it's not particularly new because the terms for that and the agreement was basically worked out in 2022 and then scuttled, as the story goes, by Boris Johnson. The Sergei Lavrov interview with Tucker Carlson is excellent, by the way. Not, again, because of Tucker, but because of Lavrov and because he gets all that stuff out there. And maybe I'll play a clip or two because it is, I believe, so worth it to do so. But he talks about the relationship with that administration. Donald Trump is, he said he was going to make peace with Ukraine before he comes into office, before January 20th. Once he did, and we can quite clearly see that that is exactly what is being displayed to the world in this story. He wants to have a ceasefire, he added. He wants to make peace. We didn't talk about the details. He thinks it's time, and Putin should think it's time because he's lost. When you lose 700,000 people, it's time. It's not going to end until there's peace. Now, Trump says in a post about Syria on the same day that it's 600,000 people. And Lavrov says it's absolutely nothing close to that. The Russian Foreign Ministry has said that Ukraine has lost many times more people than Russia. All the figures could be bullshit, but the Ukrainian figure is supposedly 400,000. the Russian figure cannot be anywhere near 600,000 unless Trump is signaling something else. He said he spoke to Zelensky about how to end the bloody conflict that has been raging since 2022. And by the way, we're getting a lot of BS from all sides about all of these situations because the media narratives to explain these situations are cover stories for what's actually happening. And what's actually happening is the global regime is being moved, and these regime proxy states that were never viewed by the rest of the world as real countries anyway are being chopped up and divided in the ways that they need to be chopped up and divided. And that is the same thing is going to be true ultimately of Israel in Lebanon and Israel in Syria. And we're probably going to see some carve out for Israel in Jordan, and then the carve out of a Palestinian state in areas that they have fled to in the what is it, the Sinai Peninsula? That area in northeastern Egypt. At some point, I think we're going to just see things divided up that way in order to form a Palestinian state. And I don't know, figure out what the acceptable borders of that situation are. You can imagine that the global regime would want the conflicts that they have perpetuated over the last 80 years in that region to continue, and solving the problems in a real way with compromise and accountability from the nations of the region, enforced by the major players of the region, like Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Iran and Russia. That's not something the regime would want. And they're going to have to create a cover story that makes all of that look like it's illegitimate and continue those problems on forever, while the solution might be much more peaceful. And there's not that many ways that that can be displayed to the rest of the world while showing the hypocrisies that are deeply enmeshed in all of that. And Donald Trump accepting the central narrative and then reversing it on the media and on the regime is the strategy that he pursues over and over and over again. So we should assume that the same thing can be happening in all of these various war scenarios. And I would suggest that's what's happening in Syria right now. I don't think that we're going to get to Syria today. We're going to have to hold off on some of that for tomorrow. Trump says, I'm formulating a concept of how to end that ridiculous war. Well, he already knows that concept, and he's been saying that he already knows for years. And on an informational timeline, we should then assume that all of that is already baked into the cake. It's already happened in every way that matters. The only way that it hasn't happened is by the disclosure to the general public. Let's just do a little bit more of this article, and then we will touch on the Lavrov interview. And I think we might have to leave it there for today. Okay. Trump also pointed to his Truth Social post in which he mentioned Russia in the context of the fall of the Syrian government. And he actually mentions Ukraine in that post as well. See, this was supposed to be my transition to the Syria talk today. Gosh, man. You have it all lined up and then things blow up right in your face. Man, I had such a good way to get it going back around. Maybe we'll just go long today. We'll see. People in the chat can declare. What happened there was Russia was not able to step up to the plate because they were all bogged down in this horrible war that should have never happened in Ukraine. And so he's saying that Russia had to pull out of the Syria situation because they already had too many of their resources and military power tied up fighting the very brutal invasion, the special military operation in Ukraine. Now, I've said these are fake foreign proxy wars. It's because they're fake foreign proxy wars. There's no way that Russia has lost 600,000 people in Ukraine. Certainly not in the very brutal invasion. Maybe they lost 600,000 over the course of the last 10 years, getting involved in the ethnic civil war there that was fought against Russian territory and Russian-speaking Slavic ethnic people in the Donbass and in Crimea. Maybe the 600,000 is a number of Russians killed by Ukraine, by the regime in Ukraine. But there's no way they've lost 600,000 troops and couldn't respond to the situation in Syria. And in fact, they were backing out of the situation in Syria. And on Saturday, The day Syria was overthrown, they had meetings, Russia, Turkey, and Iran in Doha to push forward the same agreements and priorities they had already set on in Kazakhstan, in Astana, in November. Okay? So everything that happened in Syria was already going to happen. There was obviously an agreement for Assad to leave. He didn't get forced out of government by some woke jihadis. And maybe we'll get into it. These stories are so incredible. And I think that that's why they're so much fun. But the upshot of them is that people are figuring out that, for instance, these foreign terrorists are actually on the side of the regime. It's not like the foreign terrorists are all these MAGA bigots. These terrorists, they're just the anti-regime organizations in other countries, or their destabilization efforts propped up by the regime to fight against the sovereign governments over there and destabilize countries and make it look like those governments can't handle anything and need to be removed through, quote unquote, real, free and fair elections, the same way that they do in Venezuela or anywhere else. There is no chance whatsoever that Russia was unable to keep the situation stable in Syria if they wanted. They left, and this story, or the real story, is going to fill the vacuum of what's happening there. This story is being put forward because it blows up all the regime's priorities, including the one that says Israel is always blameless. Trump revealed he spoke to Macron about NATO, reiterating that he thinks the alliance should pay their fair share, which means there is no NATO if they don't. I said NATO is good as long as they pay their bills, but they got to pay their bills. Because, when I got involved with NATO, nobody paid. And then they paid after I got involved. He agrees with me, Trump said of Macron. He's a good man. He did a good job. I told him, you have no idea how good a job you did on that chapel. That's very hard to do, painstaking. Oh, yes, I'm sure he was climbing up there doing all of that work with his own bare hands. The side chat inside the cathedral with First Lady Jill Biden was also a positive interaction, Trump said, despite their long history of making nasty remarks about each other during the 2 election cycles. Very nice. She couldn't have been nicer, Trump said about their talk. It's politics. You have to get used to it. She was very nice, and we had a very nice conversation. The former president dominated headlines with a firm handshake he had with Macron, in which he gripped his hand from the top. It's just a firm shake. He understands that. It's just a firm shake. Gosh, I love it. Trump on Prince William. I had a great talk with the prince, and I asked him about his wife, and he said she's doing well. That is the wife that disappeared and has never returned. I asked him about his father, and his father is fighting very hard. And he loves his father, and he loves his wife, so it was sad. Wait, what was sad? Is his father gone too? What's sad? We had a great talk for half an hour, a little more than half an hour. We had a great talk. He's a good-looking guy. He looked really very handsome last night. Some people look better in person. He looked great. He looked really nice, and I told him that. And Donald Trump relaxed as can be around the supposed royalty. All of this reminded me of this here picture that, what's not to love about this? This is why we should not be pretending that there is royalty in the world, and we should especially not be groveling for unelected American politicians. Look at that. Just Trump walking right in front of this quote unquote queen. Remember the freak out back then. It's not just that Trump kept the queen waiting 12 minutes, then cut in front of her during their walk. She's an old lady. She's 92, and you don't do that, even if she's some old lady at the grocery store. Wah! Hilarious. That is what the entire weekend reminded me of, and oh, how good that was. He also met with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. He had a great meeting. She has a lot of energy. I was with her a lot, Trump said of Meloni. She's a real live wire, I will tell you. She's great. We got along great. Similar group from 4 years ago, and he hopes of this world leader group that he met with, and he hopes they can straighten the world out a little bit. Trump said the newly opened French cathedral represented one of the ultimate places for religion and for Christianity before it burned down 5 years ago. I thought it was fantastic. I think they did a fantastic job with the cathedral, better than it was 900 years ago. They were able to clean the stone beautifully. It was very dark. I was there. It was very dark before, from 900 years of whatever. Now it's clean and light, and it's an exact replication. I thought it was a very sad day in the world when it was burning. You know, it represented one of the ultimate places for religion and for Christianity. And I thought it was a really sad day. So I was invited by the prime minister, and he treated our country very nicely. He did a great job. I want to show one more picture. It turns out that this event hit an almost exact 220-year delta from when Napoleon crowned himself emperor at the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And this is just spectacular artwork. I cannot remember who painted this, and so I'm going to make myself look extremely sophisticated. Napoleon crowning himself emperor, the Pope watching on. This was all beautifully filmed in Ridley Scott's Napoleon that we covered on Badlands Story Hour just a few months ago. So Trump essentially goes in and quite clearly presents himself, or is presented as, the king of the world. That is what he looked like, the king of the world on Saturday. Everyone deferred to Donald Trump in every image of that entire affair. Gosh, man, I'm really kicking myself for not remembering, when I looked this up the other day, who the painting was, who the painter was. Hold for processing. The machine will tell me the answer. And the answer is Jacques-Louis David. Okay. So I didn't even really know him anyway. The painting is housed in the Louvre. So did Trump crown himself emperor of the world on Saturday? I don't know. Kind of looks like it, doesn't it? A lot of people have thought over the last period, many people believe that Trump is the exchequer of the world, somehow running the whole system. And that's another thing that you can't totally just dismiss out of hand. It is not in any way, quote unquote, provable by people who are document dorks and think that everything that is real and true in the world somehow has a government document trail, like official sources, court decisions and whatnot. Well, you know, if Donald Trump was actually the emperor of the world, I bet there would be some court documents that suggest that he is. Really? Where would they be held? In the same places where the regime keeps the rest of its documents? The exchequer refers to a department of the British government responsible for managing public money, including receiving and issuing funds. The department is now commonly known as the Treasury. So, you know, could he be that for the entire world? Handling the financial situation across the entire world? It's possible. If the war is being fought and led by Donald Trump and whoever else against the global regime bankers and the global regime's fiat currency and the bankers' control over the affairs of the entire world and world wars and the rest of it, and they have been defeated, well, then someone else has to take that role. Could that person be Donald Trump? I think the answer is yes. And so, you know, we don't have to make positive claims that we can't substantiate. But if we follow this big story to its logical conclusions, then you have to at least consider that Donald Trump could have been placed in that role. And it's not like he doesn't have the business background for it. It's not like he doesn't have the executive background for it. I'm not saying that he has to do all the technical stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if he could. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's only about keeping your mind open to the possibilities. It's only about keeping your mind open to the possibilities. Now, some people in the chat said to keep going. I think what I'm going to do is go through this last Lavrov clip, and then we'll pick up tomorrow where we left off. Okay. I think that's the best way to handle this, because I could easily go for another hour. My voice is getting tired. The other problem is, man, that it's awfully hard to convince people to watch something when it has like a 2.5 hour timestamp on it. And you say, hey, friend, please watch this video. This will, you know, convince you of some things that are going on right now that you're in denial about. They'll see 2.5 hours and they'll be like, you have got to be kidding me, because people are busy, and I get it. It's easier to listen to the mainstream Con Inc. normies. Their shows are perfectly packaged and scripted and set up, and they do all their things, you know. And maybe someday we'll have that. Maybe someday it'll look a certain way. But right now it's not that way. And so I'm not going to try to present more barriers to entry for people who might be just kind of coming to all this for the first time. So this is Sergei Lavrov being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. This is the YouTube feed presented by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I haven't watched the Tucker feed. This looks slightly different, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe they look exactly the same. Anyway, Sergei Lavrov, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Russia, the guy that they freaked out about when he came to the Oval Office in, what was it, 2017? Remember that Trump had these 2 Russians to the Oval Office? How could he even allow them access to that sacred building while they all had it tapped?
Relations with the Trump administration. So I think they're doing the same.
But this time, President Trump was elected on the explicit promise to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. So, I mean, he said that in appearance after appearance. So given that, there is hope for a resolution, it sounds like. What are the terms to which you'd agree?
Well, the terms, I basically alluded to them when President Putin spoke in this ministry on the 14th of June. He once again reiterated that we were ready to negotiate on the basis of the principles which were agreed in Istanbul and rejected by Boris Johnson, according to the statement of the head of the Ukrainian delegation. The key principle is no non-block status of Ukraine, and we would be ready to be part of the group of countries who would provide collective security guarantees to Ukraine. NATO. No NATO, absolutely, no military bases, no military exercises on the Ukrainian soil with participation of foreign troops. And this is something which he reiterated. But of course, he said, it was April 2022. Now some time has passed. And the realities on the ground would have to be taken into account and accepted. The realities on the ground are not only the line of contact, but also the changes in the Russian constitution after referenda was held in Donetsk, Lugansk republics and Kherson and Zaporozhye regions. Yes. And they are now part of the Russian Federation according to the constitution, and this is a reality. And of course, we cannot tolerate a deal which would keep the legislation, which I quoted, prohibiting Russian language, Russian media, Russian culture, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because it is a violation of the obligations of Ukraine under the UN Charter, and somebody must be done about it. And the fact that the West, since this Russophobic legislative offensive started in 2017, and the West was totally silent, and it is silent until now, of course, we would have to pay attention to this in a very special way.
Would dropping sanctions against Russia be a condition?
You know, I would say probably many people in Russia would like to make it a condition, but the more we live under sanctions, the more we understand that it is better to rely on yourself and to develop mechanisms, to develop platforms for cooperation with normal countries who are not unfriendly to you, and don't mix economic interest and policies, and especially politics. And we learned a lot after the sanctions started. Sanctions started under Obama. They continued in a very big way under the first term of Trump. And these sanctions under the Biden administration are absolutely unprecedented. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, you know. And
well, but also just drives...
they would be never kill us, so they're making us stronger.
And so Lavrov says that, and Tucker Carlson immediately tries to flip the conversation to Russia being pushed into the arms of China and keep kind of the normie understanding of geopolitics going. Now, is that because that's what the narrative requires next? Maybe. And Tucker's just executing his role perfectly. It's totally possible. Or it's possible that Tucker Carlson's attempting to keep the conic neoconservative image of the world present in people's minds. Now, Lavrov says what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and they can't kill us, so they're only making us stronger. That's wonderful. He's talking about the sanctions. He's saying, Tucker asked him, would the removal of those sanctions be a condition for peace? And he says, no, not really. There are some people in Russia who want those sanctions removed, those people who still want to be on the SWIFT system, aka people who want the global regime's fiat currency system in play. But the sanctions didn't hurt Russia. In fact, Russia adjusted and made themselves stronger. So now they don't care about those sanctions. Again, if the war is against the global banking regime, then victory over the global banking regime is moving off their financial system and being just fine. So that means of manipulating other countries is no longer available. Russia cannot be stopped with their reputational attacks. That's what worked for a long time. People believed that Russia was necessarily an enemy, that they were communist, blah, blah, blah. The financial manipulation doesn't work. And the last resort of the global regime for control is the military. And they can't conquer Russia militarily. So they got nothing. What doesn't kill them makes them stronger. They can't kill them. So all this stuff only makes them stronger. And the sanctions is a perfect example of that being exactly true and correct. So, man, I don't know. Lavrov said it. It's not me saying it. Although we've talked about it certainly plenty of times. I want to hit one more point on the Lavrov thing today. And I think it's right here. And then we will come back to it, some more of it tomorrow.
Unbelievable.
So you said that when in 2016 in December, the final moments of the Biden administration, Biden made the relationship between the United States and Russia more difficult.
No, Obama.
Rather,
Biden
Obama
was vice president.
Exactly. I'm so sorry. The Obama administration left a bunch of bombs basically for the incoming Trump administration. In the last month since the election, you have all sorts of things going on politically in bordering states in this region that, you know, in Georgia and Belarus, in Romania, and then, of course, most dramatically in Syria, you have turmoil. Does this seem like part of an effort by the United States to make the resolution more difficult?
There is nothing new, frankly, because the U.S. Historically, in foreign policy, was motivated by making some trouble and then to see if they can fish in the muddy water. Iraqi aggression, Libyan adventure, ruining the state, basically fleeing from Afghanistan, now trying to get back through the back door, using the United Nations, to organize some event where the U.S. can be present, in spite of the fact that they left Afghanistan in very bad shape and arrested money, don't want to give it back. I think this is, if you analyze the American foreign policy steps, adventures, most of them is the right word. That's the pattern. They create some trouble and then they see how to use it. In Georgia,
I think I want to do, I think I do want to hit just one little section before that. Because it is, I just want to, man, hold for processing. There we are.
They know our position. We are not playing double game. What Putin announced is the goal of our operation. It's fair. It's fully in line with the United Nations Charter. First of all, the rights, language rights, minority rights, national minority rights, religious rights, and it's fully in line with OSCE principle. There is an organization for security and cooperation in Europe which is still alive. And the summit of this organization, well, several summits of this organization clearly stated that security must be indivisible, that nobody should expand his security at the expense of security of others, and that, most important, no organization in Euro-Atlantic space shall claim dominance. This was, last time it was confirmed by OSCE 2010. And NATO was doing exactly the opposite.
Yes.
So we have legitimacy, in our position. No NATO on our doorsteps because OSCE, agreed that this should not be the case if it hurts us. And please restore the rights of Russians.
Who do you think has been making foreign policy decisions in the United States? This is a question in the United States. Who is making these decisions?
I wouldn't guess. I haven't seen Tony Blinken for years. 2 years ago, I think, at the G20 summit, was it in Rome or somewhere? In the margins. His assistant, I was representing Putin, and his assistant came up to me during a meeting and said that Tony wants to talk just for 10 minutes. I left the room, we shook hands, and he said something about the need to de-escalate and so on and so forth. I hope he is not going to be angry with me since I am disclosing this. But we were meeting in front of many people present in the room. And I said, we don't want to escalate. You want to inflict strategic defeat upon Russia. He said, no. It is not strategic defeat globally. It is only in Ukraine.
You've not spoken to him since?
No.
Have you spoken to any officials in the Biden administration since then?
I don't want to ruin their career.
But have you had meaningful conversations?
No. Not at all. No, when I met in international events, one or another person whom I know, an American, I mean.
Yeah.
Some of them say hello, some of them exchange few words, but I never impose myself because
but nothing meaningful behind the scenes.
It's becoming contagious, when they see when somebody sees an American talking to me or a European talking to me. Europeans are running away when they see me during the last G20 meeting. It was ridiculous. Grown-up people, mature people, they behave like kids, so childish. Unbelievable.
I mean, there it is. He hasn't talked to the fake president or his administration or his American counterpart, supposedly, Tony Blinken, in years. He goes to these global meetings like the G20, and European leaders, his European counterparts, run away from him. They flee so that they are not seen talking to Sergei Lavrov, as though they are all in a junior high school cafeteria and don't want to sit at the same table as the person everyone has agreed to ostracize. The adults are back in the room, and they happen to be ninth graders. It's a bunch of Billy Madisons. It is incredible to me that anyone went along with the idea that Joe Biden was a real president and had anything to do with these foreign policy issues. I mean, we've been talking about this stuff, or I have been, and you have been. I don't know how much bigger the we is beyond me and a couple of the people in Badlands and you all. Talking about how ridiculous and fake all of this is. Everybody just cucking and calling Biden president, pretending that America is just politics as normal so they can excuse why they are focused on all these other things. By the way, it's not like people aren't focused on politics at all. They're just focused on normie politics. They want to talk about Matt Walsh's trans content, and they want to talk about illegal immigration, having ignored it for the last 3 years. Last year, when they were trying to get the unipartisan immigration reform package passed, all of a sudden immigration became a big, big issue. You know, it's, if you want to pretend that all these people are waking up the normies, why is it that along all the most important issues that we face, everyone's so far behind that they can't talk about these things? It matters that Russia was not talking to the leaders of the so-called leaders of America for years. Years. Not Joe Biden, not the Biden administration, none of them. It's because they're illegitimate. It's because all the Biden administration was a farce. It was a fraud. It was a false reality layer propped up on top of the country. And that layer was created by the global regime, its influence on finance, its influence on media, and its coordination with other nations' governments and with transnational corporations. It's all tied in together. And those people who do business with one another, well, they had to call Joe Biden the president and pretend that he was so that their business could continue forward. But people who are really playing the real game, like Sergei Lavrov, have no interest in talking to the fake president or members of his fake administration. And so we have two different things, two realities existing separately worldwide. One of them is on a reality prime layer and provable on that layer by the power dynamics that are still playing out. And the other one was a farce and a projection, a concoction, and a fraud that people simply ascribed to because of the social and financial benefits of their participation in the party of false decorum layer. It's a requirement that you believe in that reality if you want to remain a member in good standing of the party of false decorum. And so they participate in those layers and they in some way make it real. It's called hyperstition, actually. I didn't realize a few years ago when I started talking about this, that this ground had been so well covered, obviously, by, Jean Baudrillard, as we talked about, 6 months or so ago. And now I'm reading the philosopher Nick Land, and he is all about this false reality layer and what's to come in the future and how we should react to it. And I've found the neo-reactionary philosophies to be intensely interesting, but he's describing the conditions for peace in Ukraine. They've been the same conditions that they always were. It's essentially just remove the false reality narrative layer from this situation and allow the world to see what it really is. And, when Tucker Carlson began the conversation talking about how we're on the verge of nuclear war and all that nonsense, and when you keep projecting that stuff forward, you keep the old story going. That's not, in my mind, helpful. But hey, man, I'm not the one who wrote the script. I am just telling you what's happening on TV ultimately, and trying to point the way out. So, okay, I think that we're going to leave it there for today, and then I'll come back tomorrow and talk about Syria and who knows what else happens by then. Dan Wright 717 said that shirt is awesome. I'm going to show it to you one more time because I actually love this. This is my, I'm very happy with the designs that Rise Attire produced. And I'm also, this is my favorite design that I have produced. This ghost just chilling out on a couch in his weird old mansion, kind of just burnt out on the whole thing, ready to opt out. OP''D. I'll leave you with this, actually. On my journeys, I visited a friend in Louisiana whose wife is a labor and delivery nurse in Louisiana, in urban Louisiana. And she occasionally will deliver babies whose mothers create unusual names for those babies. Names like La Quinasha. Just making something up, you know? And when they are spelling out those names for her so that she can write them down to be processed, it will be L-A, comma, up top, Q-U-I, or E or whatever, however you spell La Quinasha. Comma up top for the apostrophe. I didn't make it up. It's hilarious. So OP, comma, up top, D, opt out. And I think I'm going to leave you with that as I added on to the clips at the beginning of the show. I am also adding on to the clips at the end. You will notice it. It is also from the Great Film Network, and it seems appropriate. So we're going to do that. And I will be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the Same Reasonable Podcast Network. Actually, the same reasonable time. It might be 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Eastern, somewhere around that same ballpark, anywhere between 12 and 2 Eastern. I will give a heads up on that. If you are a listener to the podcast who likes to be notified about the live stream, I don't want to email everybody on Substack every day to do that. So keep an eye on Truth Social and Telegram. I'll probably do the Substack emails for another week or two. And then, people have got to train themselves to look for that stuff in other places, because I don't want to fill up people's email boxes. I'm conscious of the too often sending of emails, and I don't want people to tune out other emails that actually have content in them on Substack. So for those purposes, follow on Truth Social, follow on Telegram, t.me/very reasonable. Telegram is my primary platform, by the way. So if you're on Twitter, you're on Truth Social, you're not getting the full experience. If you're on Twitter, you're not getting it all. On Truth Social, it's far reduced. Telegram is the main spot, t.me/very reasonable. And with that, I will be back tomorrow. Same reasonable time, Same Reasonable Podcast Network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns do not work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will obviously never be president.
Well, what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
Let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the rain.